I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the abduction of Nancy Guthrie, a case that has drawn the attention of the nation and the FBI, but still, more than a month later, has zero answers. Here's the story. The case had already gripped the nation when another development surfaced. Ransom letters referencing specific personal details. Nancy Guthrie vanished from her Tucson home overnight. Authorities believe she was taken against her will, and blood confirmed to be hers was found outside. Surveillance video recovered by Google shows a masked individual at the residence during the night. Now investigators are back in the neighborhood looking for evidence. The FBI is involved, and for Nancy's family, the waiting continues. Think about this. It's 2026. There are cameras everywhere. Well, I've got cameras in the studio, obviously, but there are cameras everywhere. When you walk outside, there are license plate readers, there are traffic cameras, there are surveillance cameras at convenience stores, at gas stations, at strip malls, and on almost everyone's home and everyone's front doorbell. Cameras everywhere. But here we are, struggling to find an image. Well, we've got an image of a suspect. He's wearing a mask. We got some images of them. We've got nothing, no vehicle. Like, you're removing Nancy from her home. You're not like carrying her, you're putting her into her vehicle. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, now we're learning that there seems like some of the neighbors right there in the Catalina foothills had some issues with their surveillance cameras.
Yeah, Vinny, they're talking about all these various different kinds of issues with their home surveillance cameras, those cameras like Ring doorbell cameras or Nest cameras or any other cameras that they have on their property. And specifically, they're talking about issues the night that Nancy went missing and in the days that followed. Now, of course, I spent time out there in Tucson talking to all kinds of different people, including neighbors. Here's what one of them told me about her own cameras. Take a listen.
I had police officers knock on my door about 9 o'clock a couple nights ago and ring my doorbell, and of course that scared me. It was dark and like what, and of course they were canvassing the neighborhood to see if people had any cameras outside, ring cameras, thing like that could help. My camera had been down, and ADT was actually at my house Monday, and my camera was not up and running until about 5 o'clock Monday afternoon.
All right, Vinny, so now this is where it's about to get a little interesting. News Nation's Brian Inton posted this on X. He's still out there. He says, quote, "The FBI is looking into a possible internet outage during the time Nancy Guthrie went missing. One neighbor tells me his Ring camera history is mysteriously not available the night Nancy disappeared." Now, Inton also posted pictures of 2 Ring cameras and said this as well. He said, "These are the neighbors' Ring cameras that stopped working around the time Nancy Guthrie was abducted. Also, in the same time frame, their dog woke them up to go outside, which they say is very unusual." And continuing on this, Vinny, this is also from NBCnews.com. They say, quote, "Investigators hunting for leads in the search for Nancy Guthrie have asked people living in her neighborhood whether they noticed any disruptions to their internet connections on the night of her disappearance. Several different homeowners from the neighborhood told NBC News that the agents who came by their homes Thursday specifically asked them if they had noticed any disruptions or issues with their internet service the night that Guthrie went missing. According to those homeowners, the agents told them that several people who live in the area had mentioned that there were glitches with their internet that night." And Vinny, you know, I'm reading all this, and that leaves open the question to me, is this suspect, or suspects plural, are they really that advanced?
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Thanks, Cody. He's going to stick around all hour. That brings us to the first question in our investigation about these issues. Are the surveillance camera issues a coincidence? You know, generally, I don't believe in coincidences when it comes to, you know, criminal investigations, murder investigations, abductions, etc. Let's see what our guests have to say. Joining me, host of the Pascal Show, Pascal, and former homicide detective, host of The Interview Room with Chris McDonough. Chris McDonough is with us. All right, Pascal, what do you think? Is Is this a coincidence, or all of a sudden, you know, is your interest peaked here?
Oh, my interests are definitely peaked. There's just no way. There's no way that this just happens to be a coincidence that all technology just happened to shut off at the right time, at the wrong time, if you really think about it, when Nancy Guthrie was allegedly taken. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, it could be this Wi-Fi jammer that people are speculating that maybe this assailant had on him. But then in my mind, I'm like, then you must have had a really expensive Wi-Fi jammer to be able to have something to go and reach out as far out as some of her neighbors. It would have to have a span, you know, it would have to have a big reach to be able to knock out all these cameras simultaneously.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence, Vinny.
Yeah, I don't know if these devices, which I never heard of before this moment, right, before all this happened today, is available at Walmart. Chris McDonough, what are your thoughts here? Is it a coincidence, or is there some technology that is going to take down the cameras in Nancy's neighborhood? But at the end of the day, her camera seemed to record something.
Yeah, and I think Pascal makes a really great point. I mean, what is the range of, a Wi-Fi jammer, and what type of advancements would you need within that technology to spread it out so far? So that's a really good observation. How far was that other house from Nancy's? And then again, like you're talking, Vinny, the fact that her camera is still operating. Now, mind you, that could have been also on a battery inside of that Nest camera, so it would have kept rolling even if he would have taken it off. But the fact that the authorities are treating these disruptions as potentially deliberate certainly does cause one to say, okay, is this a potential? And I would say, yeah, it could be a potential.
Pascal, I want to pick up on what Cody said, right? Because all along we've been looking at the man on the porch and saying, he's like literally digging in the weeds to deal with the camera in the front there. It doesn't strike me as being terribly sophisticated, but if you're jamming internet, maybe to keep images of your vehicle from being captured by cameras, there might be a level of sophistication here that we weren't necessarily considering. At least I wasn't considering. Am I the only one not hearing Pascal? Okay. Do we have him? We'll go to Chris and we'll fix Pascal's microphone. Go ahead, Chris.
So, yeah, no, that's a great question. And it then draws into this conversation about, is there more than one, which you have talked about many times on your show here, Vinny, that, I think a really good analogy, Dr. Gary Bricado, our friend, gave an analogy of, think of the chef and the waiter. Is this guy the waiter, in front of the house, and then in the kitchen is the chef actually organizing, planning, and doing all the sophistication? I think that's a really good analogy here, potentially, if this is like a conspiracy, to kidnap Miss Guthrie here. Are there more than one individuals? And the type of technology brought to the table here could indicate that.
And to me, that now jumps to next level of planning and plotting and targeting at the same time, right? And so what are your thoughts here on if, in fact, the people responsible for taking Nancy are responsible for interfering with the technology and the Wi-Fi of other cameras in the neighborhood? Do you think that's focused more on the vehicle than the people? And would there be a reason to jam those cameras and not Nancy's?
That's a great question. And vehicles are always, your primary target, if you can, in any type of crime like this, because she has been removed from the house. And if that's the case, then it's a lot easier to find that car or a car than, of course, the victim at this particular point. And this also then gives us a little more insight into the pre-incident behavior that took place, how much planning these individuals may have put into this, which then draws into the question, what type of surveillance was taking place. If they're sophisticated enough to walk up potentially with Wi-Fi jammers, you can bet there's a whole bunch of pre-planning taking place.
Yeah, and if you do have a jamming device, whether you purchase it or create it yourself, I know nothing about them. I can't imagine this is a very common item. People, I don't even know if it's legal to do this. I mean, I've never seen one, heard of one. I've heard of other jammers, but it's usually the military or law enforcement or someone else taking those actions.
Yeah, and law enforcement has that type of technology, and it did come from the military, to your point. So the fact that, and you can buy them, believe it or not, on the internet, which just goes to another level of the sophistication of the suspect here.
Yeah. Do you feel like this could be a lead, something that you could follow up on, the fact that they're what they did here to avoid detection potentially could maybe lead to getting them identified?
Yeah, and I think we're seeing indications of that, Vin. Think about how far out they went, right? They went back into January. And they started asking, folks, do you have any video? Do you have any problems with your video, et cetera? So they may be onto something here. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, Pascal, we've got the microphone hooked back up. Great to see you. Okay. So what I wanted to hear from you, like what Cody was saying, and we've always looked at the man on the porch as being this buffoon, but if we are getting now into internet jammers and things like that, this is now a next level kind of operation that's taking place.
Well, it shows to me that maybe this is, well, first off, like I was trying to say earlier, this guy, I still think he's an idiot. But I think that idiots still can do, make some smart moves because they've done it before. So I'm thinking that maybe this guy has done this type of operation before, these types of breaking and enterings or these types of abductions in the past, and is able to use, and over time was like, hey, maybe one of these Wi-Fi jammers is the way to go now. And maybe what he got is not one of those kind of $60, $70 type of Wi-Fi jammers where you have to be feet in front of the actual, in front of these security cameras, that maybe he was able to get something even stronger because of his experience. Or, somebody in his team was able to help him, obtain something much stronger than he's had before. But the fact that he cased the joint before, and I know that's still not fully confirmed whether it was days, if not hours before, but he still cased the joint. It shows to me that there was some sort of prep, there was some planning, and then, of course, he did this terrible, terrible thing and executed what he did on that night.
Pascal, host of the Pascal Show, always great to see you. Appreciate it. Say hi to the family for me.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Chris McDonough's going to stick around. Coming up next, do suspects really return to the scene of the crime?
Weeknights on Court TV.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case.
It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. Weeknights at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
We still believe. We still believe in a miracle. We still believe that she can come home. Hope against hope. As my sister says, we are blowing on the embers of hope.
There is an absolute investment in this story by the public, but it's more than an investment in the story. It's an investment in the hopes and prayers of an outcome here and their thoughts for Nancy Guthrie and her family. Let's go back to Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. And now there is some chatter, some controversy surrounding the tribute, like we see in many of the cases that we cover, the tribute that has begun to sort of accumulate in front of Nancy's house.
Yeah, and it's an area, a tribute that is continuing to grow, Vinny. I want you to take a look at some of this video. This is video outside the front of Nancy's house. People have left flowers, drawings, signs. There's even a sign that says it's a note to the kidnapper. Now, of course, this case has drawn a lot of attention, not just from neighbors in the Catalina foothills area, but from people all over the country and, frankly, people all over the world. Now, we know that Savannah and her family themselves have come out to see this tribute, but now there's talk, Vinny, of the kidnapper possibly returning to the scene. Now, this is from FoxNews.com, and this is the headline. It says, Nancy Guthrie's abductor may have returned to the crime scene, left critical clues at tribute, attributing an expert there. Now, it goes on to say, quote, as a growing memorial outside Nancy Guthrie's Tucson area home continues to draw visitors, new questions are emerging about whether investigators are monitoring the site. Yellow flowers, handwritten notes, artwork, and even an open letter addressed to the kidnapper have been left at the makeshift tribute in front of her home. So, Vinny, the kidnapper possibly returning to the scene, that is a whole new layer in this investigation. And if, we don't know what the suspect looks like, that just makes it easier on him if this is true.
Yeah, we always wonder that in a lot of these stories. Thanks so much, Cody. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Do suspects really return to the scene of the crime? And with us, former detective Phil Waters, still with me, former homicide detective Chris McDonough. All right, Phil, what are your thoughts on this? Do suspects really return to the scene of the crime?
Well, hey, Vinny, yes, there are some that do. And I think, in my experience, been very few and far between. But there are some that have such an ego, and especially in a case like this where there is no known suspect on the horizon, they may find it is fulfilling for them to return to the scene knowing what they know that nobody else does. And so it's a huge pump for a suspect like this. And then you have the this is a moving around in the open area, and he knows what he knows, and nobody else does. So, like I said, I think that it's very few and far between, but I would not be surprised. And sometimes when they return to the scene, they relive what happened inside the home. So this may be that part. That may be part of it. If he's prone to come back, he may be reliving what he did and, again, further relishing the event.
Hey, Chris McDonough, would you be interested in eyeballing all the folks who are going to that memorial? Well, I don't know if it's a memorial, but the tribute that is in front of Nancy's home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, you just think of it as a honeypot, where you set it up and now all the bees start showing up. And it's interesting that they put up surveillance on Nancy's house. ADT recently was out there, remember? And so that's almost like a countermeasure. And so I agree 1,000% with what Phil said. It's very rare, but these individuals may be trying to live the thrill of what's taken place and or monitor the investigation. It wouldn't surprise me, Vinny, even today, that he's watching us right now.
Yeah, that's the creepy part, right? Because, Phil, this is a story that dominated the news. Obviously, it's still dominating our world here at Court TV. The rest of the media is starting to simmer down a little bit. But what are your thoughts there? Do you think the decrease in the coverage and the interest, the general day-to-day interest, will make the suspect do something differently here?
That's an interesting question, Vinny, and a good one. Because we know we're dealing with a narcissistic personality here, right? We're dealing with a sociopath, and for some reason they, at least at this point in it, what we do know is that something occurred inside that house, went terribly wrong, and they did what they did. And I think that there is some sense of person or persons that they're there monitoring what's going on just as much as the surveillance equipment is monitoring who is showing up at this particular tribute. So it's kind of a give and take between the detectives and the suspect, and they're both trying to find out. The suspect's trying to find out what the detectives know, and the detectives certainly are trying to get the suspect identified. So it's a real cat and mouse game at this point in time. Sure.
Oh, it has to be. Chris, do you think it's more likely that a suspect is located or Nancy is located?
I think at this juncture, I mean, obviously we want to always remain hopeful, but we're down the road here, almost going into week 5 here. I think they're going to probably find the suspect who ultimately would lead them to Nancy. I think that will be the sequence of events.
Do you think the answer is in the neighborhood, Phil?
I think part of the answer may be. The problem you have there is Pima County covers 9,000 square miles. There's no telling where they could have put Nancy. And it is going to take, I believe, it's going to take the arrest of the suspect to bring about Nancy's recovery.
How does that happen? I know this is the big question. But Chris, do you think it's going to be a piece of evidence in any form, or do you think it's going to be intel from a person that is going to lead to that suspect? Which do you think is more likely at this stage?
And I think it's going to be a combination, Vinny. I really do. I think some of the technology that is in play here, and it's going to be, just good old, gumshoe police work. Like Phil and I grew up in that age where you just go out and you ring doorbells and you kiss babies and you shake hands and you end up finding the bad guy.
All right. Big thanks to both of our investigators tonight, Phil Waters, Chris McDonough. Thanks, guys. We'll see you again soon. Still to come, is the DNA a dead end? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the abduction of Nancy Guthrie. Why was she taken? Was it for ransom, revenge, or a burglary turned violent? Here's the story. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance is no longer just a local case. It is a national mystery. The 84-year-old Tucson resident was last seen on Saturday, January 31st. By Sunday, she was gone. Investigators declared her home a crime scene, citing evidence that she did not leave voluntarily. Blood identified as hers was located outside. Surveillance footage revealed a masked figure on the property. Security systems were disabled. Then ransom letters surfaced publicly. Yet no suspect has been identified. No confirmed proof of life released. And as the search intensifies, one question hangs in the desert air. What happened inside that home overnight? Evidence has been collected. Obviously, they've gone through that house. They've gone through the property. They're going through the neighborhood again and again, trying to solve all of this. We've got the surveillance video of the suspect on her porch that night at 2 different distinct times. Once with the backpack, once without, but always with the gloves and the mask. I want to bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. All right, let's talk about the evidence that we see in so many cases here on Court TV, where are we in the DNA portion of this investigation?
Well, to keep it brief, Vinny, the DNA has gotten us nowhere thus far. Now, investigators say they have tested a whole bunch of different things, but no DNA has led them to identifying a specific suspect. But let's run back through a couple of sources of the DNA. We'll start with the blood in the entryway going into Nancy Guthrie's home. We've seen this photo all over, and we know that this blood came back. The DNA here tested matches Nancy's DNA, so it's her blood. We saw these droplets early on in the investigation, and we know they were not there when the suspect is seen approaching the door on Nancy's doorbell camera the night of her disappearance. And then we move on, Vinny. You remember this glove. It's a photo from the New York Post. Investigators were spotted picking it up, and they reportedly found, dozens of gloves during this extensive search in this general area. Now, results for at least one of those gloves was tested for DNA. It came back. It was an employee who works at a restaurant across the street from where these gloves were found. So nothing to do with this, a suspect or anything in this case at all. Then we go on. Investigators also said they're testing DNA from inside of Nancy's house. Now, it's unclear what type of DNA, where it was found in the house, how much of it there was, but we do know that the sheriff said that it was a mixed sample, which he also says makes it harder to extract a singular sample to test to connect to one person, a suspect. And then investigators took a good look, Vinny, at this Range Rover here. It was seized from a restaurant parking lot 2 miles away from Nancy's home. And after that happened, we haven't heard much else out of this Range Rover here. They released it back. We haven't heard anything else out of it. And then lastly, Vinny, we know authorities seized a vehicle belonging to Savannah Guthrie's sister, Annie, who lives just about 10 minutes away from Nancy out there in Tucson. The sheriff's department has not said whether they've returned it to her. We know a couple days ago they were talking about it was still being in process of being returned to her. It was still part of the investigation. But they have gone on record to reiterate that the family and their spouses, that's Savannah, that's Annie, that's Annie's husband, Savannah's husband, all of them are cleared, Vinny. But, we got a lot of catch and release here in this investigation so far, but we're still feeling like we're at square one.
Yeah, it really does have that feeling. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation, and it's all about the DNA. Is the DNA a dead end? Joining me, retired police officer and expert at analyzing crime scenes, Dr. Mike McCutcheon is with us, and retired FBI special agent and professor of practice at the University of New Haven, Kenneth Gray. All right, Dr. Mike McCutcheon, begin with you. The DNA in this case, do you think ultimately it's a dead end?
Well, DNA evidence or any evidence, fingerprints, hair, fibers, footwear, any evidence that you collect is only as good as what you can compare it to. So if they have a valid or a viable source of DNA and they say, yes, we have this DNA, but they don't have anybody to compare it to, then they can say, yes, we have DNA. We collected a fingerprint. We have a footwear impression. But if you don't have a suspect to compare it to. So to say that it's dead, I wouldn't say that, because as technology gets better, other items may be more sensitive to be able to develop DNA. And if they get a suspect that they can compare it to, we've had a couple of suspects in this case. I'm sure they took their DNA, and the DNA that was collected it didn't come back to them. So to say that it's dead, I wouldn't, because it may be in 10 years that they get arrested for some type of crime and their DNA is entered into CODIS, and then we have the ability to match it to them. But right now, it's only as good as what we can match it to.
Yeah. Kenneth, I have been impressed with identifying the DNA on that glove that was found 2.5 miles away. And it was, at first we were told nothing in CODIS came back on that, so they must have gone to genetic genealogy on it and were able to, match it to someone. Turns out it was someone not involved, someone, I guess, who had an alibi, works at a restaurant. It's the glove he uses at work, and must have tossed it out his window. But to me, that's encouraging that they're able to do that. But, nothing else has led to anything with the rest of the DNA that they've accumulated. Do you think it's a dead end here?
Well, Vinny, first, the glove that was found across from the restaurant, we don't know that was solved for who it was that had that glove by genetic genealogy. Instead, it very well could have been fingerprints inside the glove. When you wear a pair of gloves, your fingers are in contact with the inner surface, and it could very well be that it was identified through fingerprints and not genetic genealogy. But nonetheless, I think the doctor mentioned it exactly, is that the unsolved cases DNA are entered into CODIS. There may not be a match at this point, but sometime in the future, somebody may get arrested on a felony charge, and then you get a match. So it's not a dead end, but it's not it's something that's taking us to the person right this moment.
All right, let's talk about the person that we do know about, Dr. Mike McCutcheon, which is the man on the porch and the way he's dressed. Do you think that if he's dressed like this, in this manner, and remains dressed in this manner, that there's any way he could leave any DNA behind?
Sure. I mean, it's tough to say, because I know that there's been other people saying, well, he's not wearing a mask, he could be leaving DNA. Well, just me talking, yes, I am putting DNA out there, but we are not at the level now to detect DNA just by me talking. Now, if I'm in some type of struggle and I'm, spitting, or I get cut, or I leave something like that, but this guy's pretty well covered, again, except for his mouth. But unless he's drinking something or actually spitting or something like that, just him talking and being in there, I don't think is going to leave DNA, unless there's some event that would cause him to be cut or to have to be able to deposit DNA, or if he's eating or drinking. I would be very unlikely to think there'd be DNA left behind by him.
Kenneth Gray, what do you think? Could he do everything that was done that night? And again, we haven't been inside the house. We haven't seen pictures inside the house. But just the fact of, if he goes inside and somehow gains control of Nancy and takes her and brings her out of the house and abducts her, do you think he remains dressed the way he is? Will he be able to do everything that he would need to do as is? Full mask, full gloves, pants, everything that he's got going on there.
So it's hard to say without knowing the details of where he went to in the house and what he did in the house. But one thing that could have been a source of DNA in there could have been touch DNA. That is, you touch the surface of your clothing rubs up against something, and DNA gets transferred with that contact from the surface of your clothing against something that was touched inside Nancy's home. That being said, anybody that had access to her home, whether it was healthcare workers or whether it was somebody working on the pool or painting the roof, if they went inside the house for some reason, they may have left DNA behind also. So just because DNA was found inside the house by some unknown individual, we don't know that that DNA was connected to her abduction.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, when you go into a crime scene like this, it's a whole house, right? Mm-hmm. Like, where do you start where you're like trying to get samples of DNA? How do you even go about that process when you've got such, it's pretty much a sprawling home.
That's a great question. And I get that question almost every time I teach a class, because it can be overwhelming for an investigator, and you really have to step back and put yourself in the mind or what you think the perpetrator did, and walk yourself through that crime scene and think of where they would walk. You have to put where you think the evidence trail is. Make sure no one's walking in that area for footwear or whatnot. But you have to start putting together what you think happened, and you are very methodically going step by step. I take notes. I have my notepad constantly writing where I think things happened, and you just start going piece by piece. For large crime scenes, it can take a long time, but you just start from that front door and you walk through to where you think the crime happened, and then how you would walk out, and you stop in increments throughout.
All right, our guests are staying with us. Coming up next, Are Carlos and Luke cleared by law enforcement?
This is the story of the Richins. Eric, a father of 3, met an untimely end, and Corey, his widow, wrote a children's book on grief.
She's also charged now with his murder.
He was faced with betrayal and terror.
I know her innocence.
Is their story a tragic romance?
Or a twisted tale of grief?
The truth will come out.
The Grief Author Murder Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
We just really don't have enough to say, this is our suspect, this is our guy, we know, or our gal. We just don't know that. And it's really kind of reckless to report that someone is a suspect when they could very well be a victim. It just, I bring to you, to the media, I plead with you to be careful of what it is we put out there, because we don't have anybody here listed as a suspect.
And that's the sheriff addressing some of the chatter early on in all of this. And that was chatter that was aimed towards a family member, which was Annie's husband. A lot of people were talking about it. He's like, listen, not a suspect. And has subsequently come out officially and cleared the family and the spouses, the children, everybody. But there have been a couple of guys who have been detained as persons of interest. Let's get back to Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. So what do we know about these 2 persons of interest who were detained, Carlos and Luke?
Yeah, Vinny, so we'll start with Carlos Palazuelos. He was a delivery driver. Now, he was stopped and pulled over in Rio Rico, Arizona, which is more south down towards the border between America and Mexico. He was detained, questioned for hours, and then he was subsequently released. Take a listen to him describing the whole ordeal.
Terrifying. Something I didn't do for something. I was being like, I felt like I was being kidnapped, bro, because they didn't tell me anything at the beginning.
And investigators showed up to this house, or were you the one who was pulled over at the traffic stop?
I was the one that was pulled over at the traffic stop.
Where was that?
Right here on by Chubasco.
Okay, and you were taken into custody at that point?
Yeah.
And you were...
I was being detained.
Detained, okay.
I was detained the whole time.
All right, so that's Carlos Palazuelos, and then we have a man named Luke Daley. He was the owner of that Range Rover that was seized and searched at the nearby Culver's that's near Nancy Guthrie's home. Actually, Luke Daley and his mother were detained and questioned for hours. He was also released. But Vinny, this was posted by Arizona family's Brianna Whitney. She posted this video to her social media of Sheriff Nanos addressing both Carlos and Luke, those 2 persons of interest. Take a listen to this.
We had what we believed to be probable cause to take action against both those individuals and the residence they occupied. That probable cause that we felt was strong was given to the U.S. Attorney, the county attorney, and a magistrate. That court order, that warrant, in both cases was served, and we got what we got from it, and we're moving on.
All right, so we heard him say they got what they got, but again, these 2 men were released, and we still don't know what exactly it is that police got from them.
Yeah, but he also said they moved on. What does that mean? Cody Thomas, great job tonight, as always. That brings us to the final question in our investigation this hour, and it's about these 2 men. Are Carlos and Luke cleared by law enforcement? Is that what we're hearing? Is that what we're seeing? Still with me, retired police officer Dr. Mike McCutcheon, retired FBI Special Agent Kenneth Gray. Kenneth, what do you think? Are they cleared? I mean, the way the sheriff said it, we're moving on.
So the fact that they did not have enough information to arrest them at that point does not make them clear. They had probable cause to conduct some searches. Probable cause gives you reason to believe that a crime has been committed and that there is evidence located at a specific location. You have to have an affidavit. I'd love to see the affidavit in both of those cases. That would tell us what they have at that point. But nonetheless, just simply because they did not arrest them at that point, that does not clear them.
Dr. Mike McCutcheon, you know, they've both spoken to the media afterwards. At least one has a lawyer, talked about potential action or bringing in action. What are your thoughts here on these two? I mean, these are the two hottest leads that I think investigators had, but resulted to this point in nothing really.
Yeah, it's tough because those hottest leads, they fizzled out really fast. And whether they're, I'll say, officially cleared, like Kenneth said, I don't think, from my experience, I don't think they gained anything from it for them to be let go. If they had anything, if they had enough probable cause to do the search, they had enough probable cause to detain, or, reasonable suspicion, probable cause to detain them and to question them, for them to get not a hair of more evidence to be able to get probable cause for a warrant for arrest, I kind of think that they probably did have probable cause. I'm not questioning that. Like Kenneth said, like to see the affidavit. But for them to release them so quickly and to not gain any information to be able to develop probable cause for an arrest, I don't want to say they're officially cleared, but in my mind, I have moved on that I don't think that they have anything to do with this case.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it was such a big deal in both cases. Homes were searched as well. It wasn't just a car. The Range Rover was actually seized. They took custody of it. But Kenneth Gray, it has subsequently been returned. As a matter of fact, the Range Rover returned before the vehicle for Nancy's daughter, Annie, has been returned, and they've been publicly cleared.
Yeah. If, just as Mike said, that if they had something as a result of those searches, they would have arrested them. So I do think that they are less likely to be involved in this case. But when I say that, that does not mean that they've been cleared. Nobody is cleared until you arrest somebody else for the crime. I've been involved in cases before where we thought we had the person, thought we had probable cause. We convinced a judge we had probable cause. We got a search warrant, and then it turned out that we were wrong. That happens.
So, I'm wondering, Dr. Mike McCutcheon, would that make investigators less aggressive in the future if, the first two times we kind of went after someone turned out to be nothing? Or do you keep the pedal to the metal?
No, I think they still go full steam. I know as a supervisor, you're going to be like, hey, look, we got to make sure we got this right. We got to make sure that everything is proper. They're still going to do that. But if they have a lead, they're going to follow it like a dog on a bone. They're not going to say, well, we don't want to be wrong. You know what? Unfortunately, sometimes you have to be wrong because you're not going to, especially a case where human life is involved, you're not going to say, hey, we better wait. If you have the probable cause and that's your level, if you have probable cause, then you go for it. You're not going to say, well, let's get a little extra, especially when life's in the balance.
All right. Big thanks, Dr. Mike McCutcheon, Kenneth Gray. Appreciate your valuable time. All right. Probable cause in this case sometimes means nothing. I know that because there is seemingly no connection between the two subjects who were persons of interest, and the warrants were based on probable cause. Now, even if one of them was connected to the abduction, the other would have been 100% innocent, which tells me law enforcement is scrambling a little bit here. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.